When we shine a light on these things and we're able to talk about it, that's when we're able to heal. One of the analogies that I always use is these tough negative emotions, like stress, depression, anxiety, are like a tunnel. You're meant to go through them. You're meant to go towards the light. But in order to go towards the light, you have to first address and acknowledge it. This is why this conversation is so important. And I just want to address the folks who are watching this right now. Whatever temporary, notice I use the word temporary, whatever temporary issues that you're going through right now, whether it's a job loss, a breakdown in a relationship, losing someone, anxiety, loneliness, this too shall pass. You're not alone, though it feels very lonely. This is why we have Amy on the call as well. So Amy Yip is a somatic life transformation and mental fitness coach. She's a keynote speaker, a trainer, and the author of Unfinished Business, Breaking Down the Great Wall Between Adult Child and Immigrant Parents. Welcome, Amy.
And I want to appreciate you, Lan, for your vulnerability, because what I've discovered on my own journey is vulnerability is a strength. Mm-hmm. And when we are willing to be vulnerable, it helps other people too. And so thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story. It's so important for all of us to share our stories. So
yes, that was one of the lessons that I learned leading teams. Was in the past, I thought that in order to be a leader, I had to be stoic. And I realized that no one wants these leaders that are perfect. They want someone that's relatable. And when I show my weakness, it allows others to be able to share what they're going through. The past model, you felt like you had to live in this perfect bubble, and there's no such thing as perfect, right?
There's nothing that's perfect. And something I always tell people is to go into nature. You go into nature and nothing in nature is perfect, and yet it is beautiful. And what is beautiful about it is the harmony of it.
Right? Love that. I love that.
Yes.
Okay.
So I do have some slides. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. The purpose of today's talk is really around building your mental fitness, right? So we'll be talking through what is mental fitness anyways, why it matters. I'll go through the 3 muscles, and then the goal is you will actually leave with tools that you can use to start building your own mental fitness. And this conversation is really meant to be interactive. So I invite everyone to ask questions, participate, engage, raise your hand, put things into chat. And so here is your first opportunity to engage with the content. So raise your hand if you relate to these statements. How many of you have struggled to prioritize yourself, to take care of your own well-being because it feels like you have to take care of everyone and everything else first? Raise your hand if you resonate with that. Okay. How many of you have relate to you've struggled with pursuing something you long for, whether it's a career, it's a hobby, a relationship, speaking up in a meeting? Part of you said, yeah, you're going to be amazing at that. And then part of you said, no, that's a bad idea. You're going to look dumb. You're going to fail. Okay. I see a bunch of hands. How many of you have struggled to stay positive and motivated and empathetic to others and even yourself with what life has thrown you? Bunch of hands. Okay. So when you start to strengthen your mental fitness, you'll be able to develop mastery over your own mind, right? You'll ultimately be able to recognize those self-sabotaging thoughts, the ones that tell you that you're not good enough, the ones that question yourself, judge others, the ones that push you harder and harder and tell you you cannot be happy until, the ones that's causing all of the fatigue, the stress, the self-doubt. Okay. And so what do you think mental fitness is anyways? Take a guess. What do you think mental fitness is all about? And you could put it into chat. And if anyone wants to, you can come off mute too. But what do you think mental fitness is? Building resilience, exercising the mind, balance. Yes. So all of this. Essentially, mental fitness is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive mindset rather than getting upset and stressed. It is your capacity to do that. And so if I were to use a physical analogy to bring this to life, if you have average physical fitness, then you could probably climb small hills pretty easily, right? But what if I put a huge mountain in front of you? What would happen as you're climbing that if you're of average physical fitness? As you're climbing it, you'd be losing your breath. Your legs might start shaking, right? Your heart would be pounding, and it would be physically hard for you to handle. And so the same thing is happening to many of us with what is going on in the world today. Most of us are of average mental fitness, which means you could handle the hills of life with relative ease. But what is happening in the world is a big mountain. And so using this analogy, what you begin to see is possibility, right? This thing that's in front of me, maybe I don't need to be blaming this thing. Maybe this thing is just a mountain. And maybe the mountain is not so bad. Maybe the question that I can ask myself is, how do I build up my mental fitness so that I can climb the mountain and not lose my breath and not have shaking legs? And imagine when you get to the other side of the mountain, what happens with the rest of your life? The rest of your life is going to be easy peasy cakes, right? You're going to look back and be like, climb that mountain. This feels easier. I can do this. I know I can do this. And I want to be clear that mental fitness is not the same as mental health. It is not the same as mental health. And here's why. Mental fitness is about being proactive. It's just like if we were to use a physical analogy. So if you were to run a marathon, what do? You get physically fit ahead of time so that on marathon day, you can run the marathon. And what we know is life will throw shit at us. And so how do we prepare for that ahead of time, right? How do we build our mental fitness ahead of time so that when life throws the marathon our way, we're ready to run it? So that's what mental fitness is all about. Why do you think mental fitness matters, though? Yeah, Viktor Frankl's mindset from Man's Search for Meaning. Mindset makes a difference. Thank you for that, Lee. So if we know what mental fitness is, why do you think it matters? What brought you here today?
Well, I think just like anything else, like a physical fitness and brain being our most complex organ is just another organ that we can exercise, right? The muscle. Yeah. So yeah, you have to work at it and to build that muscle up and to strengthen it and practice and stretch and kind of rip and tear those fibers and able to grow.
Yes, it is. It is a muscle. And I'm reading some of the comments so we don't lose our shit when adversity comes near. Yeah, not having a meltdown every 2 weeks. Right. The thing with mental fitness is oftentimes we want to change. We don't want to lose our shit. We don't want to have a meltdown. And the thing with change is that only 20% is knowledge and insight. So we might know we want to do it. We know how to do it, but we aren't able to do it when the time comes. 80% of change actually comes from the building that mental muscle and the habit. For example, who here wants to get healthier? Raise your hand. If I were to ask you, can you tell me what it takes to get healthier? I bet you could, right? You sleep 7-8 hours, you drink 7-8 glasses of water, you get some movement, eat better. And so what is standing in your way? And it is not lack of knowledge. It is the lack of that mental muscle and the habit. And that's why so many of us get stuck in the same pattern. And it's the same thing when it comes to our mental fitness. A big piece of our mental fitness is based on our thoughts. Take a wild guess. How many thoughts do you think you have per day? How many thoughts do you think you have per day? And you could put it into chat. You could come off mute to shout it out. But how many thoughts do you think?
Too many to count.
Too many to count. Indeed, but somebody did count it. 50,000. So we have 12 to 60,000 thoughts per day. What percentage of those thoughts do you think are negative? Take a wild guess. What percentage of those 12 to 60,000 thoughts do you think are negative? Lan says 90%, 80% from Lee, 90%. So 99%. So I say 80% as well. So everyone is very close, 80%. 80% of your thoughts are negative. What percentage do you think are repeated? So what percentage of the 12 to 60,000 thoughts per day do you think are repeated day after day after day? %, 50%, 70%. Okay, so we've got a range for this one, 65. It is actually 95%. So if you think about it, 12 to 60,000 thoughts per day, 80% are negative, 95% are repeated day after day after day. And what consumes your life consumes your mind, or what consumes your mind consumes your life, right? And that's why building your mental fitness matters so much. And so what I'm going to be doing for the rest of today, I'm going to quickly cover some of the research behind mental fitness. We're going to talk through the 3 core muscles and then 3 steps to shifting. How do you actually do it? Okay. The concept of mental fitness, as we're talking about it, is based on research. And there's a book. It's in 20 different languages. It's on Amazon. If you want all the research on it, you can go in there and it will give you all the data. I'm not going to delve into that today. What I do want to share is that the research has found there are 3 core muscles to building your mental fitness. And those are the saboteur interceptor, the sage muscle, and the self-command muscle. And if you are wondering what the heck are those, I am so glad you asked, because that's what we will be going into today. And before I dive into this, do we have any Star Wars fans? I see some hands up. Okay, that's great, because mental fitness training has become lovingly called Jedi mind training. And why has it been called Jedi mind training? It is because we know there are 2 characters in the head all the time. And who has experienced this, right? There's this Darth Vader always messing with you, and it always gets into battle with the inner Jedi in your head, and they're just going back and forth, right? And so that is the saboteur, is the Darth Vader, and the sage is the inner Jedi, right? And that is why one of the core muscles is intercepting the saboteur, and the other is building the sage muscle, the inner wisdom, okay? And so let's talk about the saboteur interceptor. And we can't talk about saboteur interceptor without talking about survival. Survival has always been our #1 priority. That is what our brain is constantly trying to do for us, right? And what are we trying to survive from? It's this. So back in our cave days, we needed to survive from the saber-toothed tiger. And we needed to survive from this. And when it came, we needed to decide, do I fight, do I flight, or do I freeze? Hopefully not freeze, but what am I going to do? And the other thing is, we also needed to be liked and accepted into the tribe. We needed to be liked and accepted into the tribe, and that was survival also. Because if you think about it, are you more likely to survive when this thing comes if you're alone or if you're with a tribe? And so that's why, even though we may live in a very different world today, we still have minds that operate in the same way. That is why before everyone joined, we were talking about, actually, no, Lan, you mentioned this during the recording, but kids are having increased mental health issues, right? And there's all this social media, and it is because social media is a great place for constantly assessing and deciding, am I fitting in? Am I worthy of being part of this tribe, right? At the end of the day, we all want to belong, and that's for survival reasons. And it's understanding that this is what our brain's trying to do. We're constantly looking around, assessing and judging. Am I going to fit in? Are people going to accept me? We're also constantly assessing and judging other people to decide, are they my enemy or are they part of my tribe? When the saber-toothed tiger comes, are they going to just throw me to the saber-toothed tiger? Right? And so we're constantly assessing and judging. And that's why the master saboteur of them all, we all have this. This is the judge. And the judge judges in 3 modalities. The judge judges the self. This is also known as the inner critic. It is the one that says, you didn't get the promotion, you're a complete failure, right? Or if you take this opportunity, you're just going to fail anyway, so don't bother. It's the thing that's constantly berating you for past imperfections and future failures before they've even happened. The judge is also judging others, right? It's constantly sizing other people up, deciding, are they part of my tribe? Are they not? This one is to this or to that. And it is the third modality is judgment of circumstances. So this is one that some people aren't even aware of that they're doing, but it is the thing that's constantly looking at situations and circumstances and telling you, you cannot be happy until. You can't be happy until you have a certain job title, a career, until you retire, until your to-do list is done, until other people change. And so the judge is judging in these 3 different ways. And the judge has friends. So we call them the accomplice saboteurs. And so the judge has a couple of friends. They're the avoider, the controller, the hyperachiever, hyper-rational, hyper-vigilant, pleaser, restless, stickler, and victim. What a cast of characters. And if you're looking at these and thinking, oh yeah, my boss has the stickler, it drives me up the wall, or my partner has the avoider, I just get so frustrated, or my child has the restless, it just irritates me. I encourage you to not be focused on other people's saboteurs, but to truly look at who are your saboteurs, right? How are you messing with your own mental fitness? How do you cause your own stress? How do you impact your own relationships? Because I guarantee it is a combination. It is a combination of the judge along with some of these other saboteurs. Okay, at the same time, don't feel bad about it. So how does one figure out how your own which are your top saboteurs? There's an assessment. I will share the link with Lan so she can share it with everyone. But there's an assessment that you can take. You can figure out which are your top saboteurs. And once you do that, you get results. So here are my results. My top saboteurs: pleaser, controller, hyperachiever. And so the way the assessment works is you get something like this. You can dig into it and open up the descriptions. And so what you see here is a description of the hyperachiever. And oftentimes I get the question of, well, isn't achiever a good thing? Right? How could it be a saboteur? And the way to think about the saboteurs, they are a strength overused, or a strength used in the way that doesn't serve you. So for example, you can have a knife, which is a single tool. And a knife can be used by a surgeon to save someone. It could be used by murder to kill someone. Same tool, different uses. And so saboteurs use your strength in a way that does not serve you. Okay, so for hyperachiever, for example, a lot of great strengths. Able to achieve full potential, inner directed, inspiring to others, goal-oriented. But what is the impact? So if you're anything like me, if you have the hyperachiever, your hyperachiever might have told you, you will be happy when you achieve this thing, right? For much of my life, I was climbing mountain after mountain. And was I happy when I got to the top of the mountain? No. right? Before I even got to the top of the mountain, I was like, oh, I'm going to get to the top of the mountain. I'm already looking for my next mountain to climb, right? And so it becomes this endless climbing of mountains. And so it turns it into burnout, not true happiness. And so that's the way that saboteurs work, right? They tell you something, but it's not the truth. And so the way to think about this, it's almost like creating a wanted poster. So you're able to take your assessment, you look at the descriptions, and you can create a wanted poster. And why is this so important? Because most of our thoughts, those 80% of negative thoughts, 95% are repeated, those are happening subconsciously. And so what we're trying to do here is bring that into awareness. Your saboteurs are messing with you. And so it's how do we build that awareness? Awareness is always the first step, right? So for the longest time, my hyperachiever saboteur, late at night while I'm doing my work, it will whisper in my ear, just one more email, just one more, right? And then next thing I know, I've gone through 10 emails. It's like 2 a.m. And so it's the whole goal here is becoming aware of how and when does your saboteur mess with you. And so that is the saboteur interceptor. It's about recognizing the way it lies to you and being able to intercept and catch it. And so the next muscle is the sage. And before I go into that, I want to pause to see if there are any questions. No questions? All right. Okay, then let's keep going. So the second muscle is the sage muscle. And remember the Jedi mind training. So this is how do you strengthen that Jedi, the inner Jedi in you. And an important part of this work is there are essentially 2 sides of your brain. So I could put your head into an MRI machine and I could see which side is being activated. If I were to put your head into an MRI machine, there's a lot of neuroscience research on this. So saboteurs live on one side of your brain. It's all about survival, right? That the survival from that saber-toothed tiger. And then the other side of your brain is the sage. And so if you happen to have the hyper-rational saboteur and you want all the details, there are 2 chapters in the book that go through all of the details. But what I want to emphasize here is essentially there are 2 sides, and your saboteurs and sage live on different sides, and they produce different emotions and thoughts and attitudes. Okay. And so the sage is essentially that thriving side of the brain. And the sage operates from a perspective called the sage perspective. And that perspective is that every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift or opportunity. Every outcome or circumstance can be turned into gift and opportunity, including all the things that are happening in the world today. Race relations, politics, wars. And if your saboteur is activated right now, it will probably be saying something like, that's stupid, that's silly, get her off the stage. What is she saying? That's dangerous, right? So if your saboteur is activated, that's probably what it's saying. But if you activate the sage side of your brain, then you know that's actually how the world works. And to bring that to life, I want to tell you a story. And it's one of my favorite stories. And it tells you the wisdom of the sage. So there's an old farmer and he lives on his farm with his son. And he has this beautiful stallion. And the stallion is entered into a county fair and wins first prize. The farmer's neighbors come, they gather, they congratulate him. And he calmly looks at them and says, who knows what is good? Who knows what is bad? They're puzzled, but the neighbors go away. And the next week, some thieves heard about the stallion's increased value and they come and steal the horse. When the neighbors come to commiserate with the farmer, they find him again very calm. And he says, who knows what is good? Who knows what is bad? They're puzzled, they go away. And several days later, the spirited stallion escapes from the thieves, finds his way back to the farm, and brings a few wild mares that he's befriended along the way. And to his neighbors' excited rounds of congratulations, the farmer once again says, who knows what is good? Who knows what is bad? And they're all puzzled again. They go away. And a few weeks later, the farmer's son is riding the stallion. He's thrown off one of the new mares that he's trying to break in. His leg is fractured. Neighbors come. They try to commiserate with the farmer, but he once again reminds them, who knows what is good? Who knows what is bad? And the following week, the army is marching through the village, conscripting eligible young men for war. Farmer's son is spared because his leg is fractured. And the neighbors no longer come. They don't come to congratulate because they know what the farmer is going to say. They know what the response is going to be. And by now, all of us know what the farmer is going to say. And I want to invite everyone to say it together. Please say it with me so we can all remember this. Who knows what is good? Who knows what is bad? And there is profound wisdom in this story. If there's nothing else you remember today, remembering this story can change everything when you begin to bring this perspective into your life. One of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein is that the most important decision we believe is whether we live in a friendly or hostile universe. And so my question is, what do you believe? The answer to that determines our entire experience of life, right? And actually, what you're calling your experience, 80% of your experience is getting generated from the inside of your brain, from the information that's inside there. Only 20% is from the actual external circumstances. Right? 80% of your experience, whatever it is that you're calling your experience, is generated from your brain. How many have ever experienced a breakup? Raise your hand. So I've experienced many breakups, and during the actual breakups, I thought it was the worst thing ever. I felt like I was rejected. I'm not loved. This is the end of the world, right? Like it felt pretty horrible. And now I look back at those relationships and I'm like, phew, best thing to ever happen, because if those didn't happen, I would not be with my amazing husband today. And what has changed? Those breakups still happen the way they happened. I didn't go back and change them, but it's the way that I'm looking at it now. The information that's inside of here has changed the way that I looked at them, right? And so when people ask me this question of, which is true, the saboteur that everything is bad, or the sage that everything is a gift, the answer is whichever you believe becomes true. Whichever you believe becomes true. One of my favorite sayings is, where focus goes, energy flows. When you believe something, you'll see more of it. If all of us here decided we're going to go buy a red Jaguar leaving here, what will you start to see a lot of when you leave? When you walk outside, you will start seeing a lot of red Jaguars. And is it because everybody all of a sudden decided to buy red Jaguars? It is not, right? It's because that's where our focus is. And so whichever you believe becomes true. And that's how the sage perspective works. It's that every outcome or circumstance can be turned into gift and opportunity. And I often do get the question here of, well, what about really, really bad things, right? And so I'll offer two examples. One is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It was started by a woman who, her daughter was hit by a drunk driver. And so she turned that into an opportunity to help change the world. And so she started Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Christopher Reeves is another one where he was paralyzed from horseback riding, and he dedicated the rest of his life to that cause. And so the sage perspective is not about toxic positivity. It is not about not facing reality, but it's saying, this is the truth. And how long do I want to hold my hand on the hot stove, right? When do I want to face that my hand is on a hot stove and I want to make a decision about what I want to do? And hopefully what you want to do is turn that into an opportunity or a gift. So that was the sage. So we did saboteur, interceptor, and sage. And I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions before I continue to the last piece, which is the self-command muscle.
I guess the question I have, Amy, is once you've discovered your saboteur, what is the next action that we can do?
So it is actually creating almost like what you get as a result is a broad description. So it's like the hyperachiever for everybody. And so it's really around honing in on how does my specific saboteur mess with me? When does it happen, right? So for example, my pleaser is strongest with those I love the most because I want them to be happy, specifically my parents, my husband. And so when you start recognizing when does it show up, who does it show up with, and how does it show up, then you can start catching it.
So almost like there's some power in just being able to identify it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when we put some space between and we were able to identify, okay, well, I'm becoming a people pleaser because I'm in this situation. And so maybe because of this, I might need to create boundaries. But the first step is acknowledging that there is an issue.
Yes.
And then figuring out whether it's what tools, what would the sage say to me, and
Yes.
leaning into that opposed to what the saboteur is telling you.
Yes, exactly. And each of us will need something different based on our saboteurs and how it shows up. So my pleaser saboteur always told me that to do things to make my husband happy, right? So I would cook him a whole meal and preempt all the things that I thought would make him happy. And then if he comes home and he's like, oh, I'm craving a burger and I've cooked up this huge meal, I get upset. That's how the pleaser messes with you, right? It tells you you're doing it for the other person, but then there's resentment beneath it. And part of my way of handling my pleaser saboteur is recognizing what is it that I want? How do I ask for what I want? And how do I set boundaries by learning to say no? So it's exactly what you were saying. It's becoming aware of how your saboteur shows up. What does it do to mess with you? And then what are the things you then need to work on? And finding a accountability partner is helpful in that, right? My husband was recognized my saboteur. And so he was able to help me learn to ask for what I wanted. He would specifically ask me, what do you need right now? And when I say, I don't know, he says, what do you need right now? And he'll keep asking until I give him an answer. And even or learning to say no, when I say yes, he'll say, are you sure? Are you really sure? And so having that partner to help you, and it could be a coworker, it could be a good friend, it could be a spouse. Any other questions? All right. So this last muscle is the self-command muscle. And I am curious, who here thinks they are in control of their own mind? Raise your hand. I see shakes. I see some maybes. I think I might see some hands up. Depends. Yeah. So how many of you still live and respond from a place of anxiety, frustration, restlessness, guilt, shame, anger, even though you know it doesn't serve you, right? And so that's why I want to look at everybody in your eye and tell you, you are not in command of your own mind. Because if you were in command of your own mind, would you really command your mind to wake up at 3 a.m. worrying about something that you have no control over? Right? Would you command your own mind to be constantly comparing yourself to others, berating yourself for perceived shortcomings? No. And so if you're not choosing these things, then why is it happening? And it is because you aren't running the show. Your mind is running the show. And too often it's doing it from that Darth Vader mode, the saboteur mode, right? And so this third muscle, the self-command muscle, is important, because when you start building that saboteur interceptor muscle, when you start recognizing when it shows up, it is going to be hard to just shift and say, well, what's the gift here, right? Oftentimes when you're in saboteur mode, there's all these emotions and things happening, and it's hard to look at the gift and opportunity. And so this third muscle is around helping you to shift from saboteur to sage. And so how do we do this? It is with something called a PQ rep. PQ stands for positive intelligence quotient. So there's IQ, EQ, so this is PQ. So for physical fitness, if I want to build my bicep muscle, what do? I get a dumbbell and I do some bicep curls, right? And the equivalent of that is 10-second PQ reps. And so I want to practice a few here. You could keep your eyes open, you could close your eyes, but I invite you to take 2 of your fingertips and rub them together with such attention. You can feel all the fingertip ridges. Notice all the sensations of touch. Now take the fingertips of one hand, rub it against the fingertips and palm of the other. Feeling all the valleys, the hills, the temperatures between your hands, all the sensations of touch. You can let that go. So what's your mood right now? Did you notice anything shift? Right, that was maybe 30, 40 seconds. So it's about 3 or 4 reps. And that's not going to change the world. But if I were to put your head into an MRI machine right now, what we would begin to see is it ever so slightly quieted the region where your saboteur lived, and it ever so slightly activated the side that your sage lives in, right? It's really cool stuff. And so just think that's 30 seconds, and imagine if you did those kinds of exercises all the time. And that's your self-command muscle. That's the muscle that helps you to be able to shift from saboteur to sage. So recognizing when you're in saboteur mode, it helps you to shift, right? And we could try another one. So you could keep your eyes open or closed. And I invite you to take a deep breath. Notice the temperature of air as it enters your nostrils. Notice the temperature of air as it exits, just a little warmer. Notice the rising and falling of your chest or stomach as you breathe in and you breathe out. And slowly letting that go. So just noticing how that shifted you. There are a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways to do this, right? There's one with the toes that I love, where you wiggle all 10 of your toes and feel all of your toes. And are there any meditators here? I see a bunch of you. Okay, so if you're a meditator, you might recognize that there's a similarity between this and meditation. And so the difference is, well, you can think of meditation and mindfulness as forms of doing PQ reps. And the beauty of PQ reps is that you don't have to be a lifelong meditator, and you can do these with your eyes opened in the middle of your busy day. So let's say you're in the middle of a meeting, someone irritates you. It's hard to raise your hand and say, well, I need to step out to meditate right now because you've irritated me, right? But what you could do is do this. And then I just did it the other day when someone cut me off. I'm like, let me just feel my fingers, right? And it helps you to shift. And so that's the beauty of this. So those are essentially your 3 muscles: the saboteur interceptor, intercepting the saboteur, the sage muscle, and then the self-command muscle. Okay. And I'm going to quickly go through the 3 steps of how do you put that together, and then I'll open it for questions. So the first step is to notice and stop. if you are feeling any sort of emotion like stress, frustration, anger, any of that, then stop. It doesn't matter who is doing what to you, what is happening in the world. If you're feeling those emotions, then stop. And sometimes I find it hard to just stop. So what I find helpful is to just name the saboteur. So for example, my hypervigilant, I have called her Miss Worrywart. So when Miss Worrywart shows up, I say, hello, Miss Worrywart, right? And remembering to have compassion for yourself. Not all of us have these saboteurs. So don't get upset, name it, stop. The second step is to shift your awareness. So doing PQ reps like we did, and until you feel like you feel a shift, right? The bigger the thing that's triggered us, the more reps it will take. Or the longer of a time the stronger muscles you'll have to have. And so what that means is you will have to be training for a while. It's kind of like if you go to the gym, if you're new to the gym, it will be hard to do dumbbell with like a 50-pound weight, right? You might start with a 5-pound weight, but eventually you could move up. And so that's the same notion with mental fitness, is getting strong enough so you could get there. And then the third step is activating your sage. So what is the gift or opportunity? How do I turn this into a gift or opportunity? And asking that question, okay? And so those are your 3 steps: noticing your saboteurs, stopping, shifting by doing the reps, and then activating the sage. And I want everyone here to recognize that today is the equivalent of watching a how-to video. Like if you were about to go ride a bike and you just watched the video, and now it's about going and doing the practicing, right? Remembering I said earlier, 20% of change comes from knowledge and insight. So you have that knowledge and insight. We did some practices today. And oftentimes I have people say, well, I don't have time and I have all these other things happening. And I always encourage you, make yourself a priority, because at the end of the day, you're your longest commitment. So how committed are you? And so I invite all of us as a community, let's strengthen our mental fitness together. Step 1 is to take that positive intelligence assessment. Okay, I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions.
There's a question from the LinkedIn by Harvey Bowden. Where do we draw the line with toxic positivity?
So toxic, I think the question is, how do you differentiate between toxic positivity and this? So this is not about being positive all the time. It's about not sitting in the negative space, right? Toxic positivity is all about everything is dandy and beautiful and wonderful. And the reality is not everything is dandy and wonderful and beautiful. And I can make changes. I can turn that into a gift or opportunity. I don't have to sit. It's just like the analogy that I had with hand on the hot stove, right? When your hand is on the hot stove, toxic positivity is like looking away while your hand is still on the stove. Whereas what we're doing here is facing, okay, yes, my hand is on the hot stove, and now I want to turn this into something that is positive. What other questions? And you can come off mute, you can put into chat.
Not so much.
What was the, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Nikki.
I was just going to say, what was the name of the book again?
Positive Intelligence.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can actually go to the site, positiveintelligence.com, to take the assessment, and you could go to Amazon to get the book actually.
So Lee has a question, and then Twee has a question in the chat.
Go ahead for Twee. I was just going to give props to the book.
Okay, awesome. Twee, do you want to unmute and ask your question, or do you want me to ask it for you?
Sure, I can ask. So my question is, any recommendation on how I can make the change lasting? Because like when I'm in the heat of the moment, I'm acting off of my emotions, and whatever I learned, I haven't embodied yet. And so I'll just make decisions that I may regret later.
Yeah. Wonderful question. So a couple of reflections on that. One is practicing before you need it, right? You don't, hopefully, at least I wouldn't be able to do that on marathon day, go and run the marathon. So it's how do I train ahead of time? So it's doing the practices every single day and doing it on smaller things that won't be as triggering, right? How do I practice with the 5-pound weights instead of the 50-pound? So that's one. The other thing is recognizing, one of my teachers at Strozzi Institute said, it takes 300 times of intentional practice to build muscle memory, 3,000 times to become embodied, right? And 3,000, so 300, 3,000. And so it's recognizing that every single time I practice, I'm getting a little closer and not being too hard on yourself that you're quote unquote failing or falling off. It's okay, I'm practicing, I'm doing one more practice that gets me closer to the lasting change. I'll tell you that for the longest time for me, I'm teaching this stuff and I will still have blow-ups when it's the biggest muscle thing, when it's the biggest weight for me. And it's taken many, many years of intentional practice to get to the point of now I recognize how anger shows up in me, right? And I'm able to catch that before I have the massive blow up. I'm able to name that, do my PQ reps, but it's taken practice. And so it's knowing, why do you want to change?
Yeah. And sometimes even adding like a ritual before something, because I know when I was younger, I had an anger issue and people seem to be surprised at that. But one of the things I just started implementing was when I felt the feelings of anger, I would just focus on breathing and I would just breathe, count down for 5. And then before I said anything, emailed anything, I would always just have this ritual: breathe, count to 5. And then instead of making my natural reaction before that was anger, react. And just adding that 5-second buffer made a huge difference. So like adding some type of ritual when you have that trigger event, I think was helpful for me.
Thank you, Lynn. The other thing that everyone can also practice is with different emotions. So why we call certain emotions negative is emotions are merely sensations in the body. So they start as sensations in the body. So say I'm about to get on stage to speak, my heart starts racing, my throat gets choked up, my legs shake, and then my head creates the story that I'm going to go on stage and I'm going to fail and look stupid. And so it's recognizing the sensations in your body and being able to go there and feel the emotions instead of going into the head. And a lot of times we don't like these like so-called negative emotions because they don't feel good. Anger does not feel good in the body. And if we're able to sit with those sensations and feel the sensations that don't feel good, they will actually go away on their own a lot faster than if we sit in the head.
I love that. Amy, what's the one takeaway you want people on this call to take away from today's discussion?
Who knows what is good? Who knows what is bad? Mm-hmm. There's always a gift and opportunity if you look for one.
I love that. And also, how can we find you? How can we help you? I know you have your book out, so please plug away.
Yes. So I do have a book on the way, and yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, Amy C. Yip, and follow me on my website. So amyyipcoaching.com.